Hello, I'm Alex Mansfield, the host of Manny Talks Shooting, and welcome to another episode. This is the shooting podcast where I talk to individuals all across the shooting industry. We'll talk competition, self-defense, concealed carry. If you like this content, check out our YouTube channel, Manny Talks Shooting. And without further ado, let's get to this episode. Manny Talks Shooting is proudly presented to you by D2 Custom Guns. Did you know that Phil the Groundhog isn't the only thing Puxatawny, Pennsylvania is famous for? That's right, D2 Custom Guns, the home of Dan Heizenreiter and one of the best, fabulous 2011 builders in the country. So make sure you guys go check him out, D2 Custom, anywhere you can see him on the social media, Facebook, Instagram, go check him out. If you see myself, Patches Reader, anyone with the D2 Custom Guns, make sure you go check him out, and you will thank me later. Now, let's get on to the show. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another installment of Manny Talks Shooting, the shooting podcast that I do from my side room or my dog's room, if you consider it, because my dog lives in this room. So tough shits and live with it. This show is proudly presented to you by D2 Custom Guns. Dan Heizenreiter over at D2 Custom Guns makes fabulous open guns. He made my Manny's Master Blaster, and it's rocking solid as can be. So check him out at d2customguns.com. Go order yourself a MIDI open gun, a limited gun, or a limited optics gun. Do yourself a favor and get it done. Without further ado, we're sitting down with your USPSA Area 7 Director, Mr. Frank Rizzi. So everyone, give me a round of applause for Frank. See, I just get to play with the thing now, and it works. But welcome, cool. Frank. Thanks for joining me tonight. We're going to have a good one. I can feel it.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule and, clicking that little button and picking a time slot. It works. So,
yes, it did.
So, Frank, for some people who don't know you, and they're going to learn about you and get to know you a little bit better after this, who is Frank Rizzi and how did he get into shooting?
So, for those who don't know me, I am Frank Rizzi. I am your USPSA Area 7 Director. I am from the New York area, New York City, specifically the borough of Staten Island. I got into shooting probably when I'm guessing 13. Around that time, so a while back, about over 30 years ago, I got into shooting basically from my grandfather, who did a lot of hunting upstate New York, some good hunting up there. So, and that's pretty much how I got into it. Kind of grew from there. I was able to join a range on Staten Island, a local range here. Got into the shooting sports. Eventually, became the president of that range. I've been the president of that range now for 7 years. Been on the board of directors probably for 13 years. And so I got into USPSA because there's another local club on Staten Island who started USPSA matches, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go to one of their matches. Someone lent me some gear to use because I didn't have anything. So went there with some loaner gear, a Glock, belt, some mag pouches, and shot my first USPSA match, and boy, was I hooked. My first reaction was, wow, how could we do this at our club? How could we get some bays put in? How could we get one of these matches at our club? So, I got bit by the bug, and it's been downhill ever since. So that was probably going on 7 years ago now, I think, right around the time where I just became president.
Oh, well, just right into the fires there, right? So yes, become president of the club, run USPSA.
Yep.
Be on the board of directors there.
Yep.
So we'll talk a little bit about this, but there are two USPSA clubs and two gun clubs on Staten Island.
That's correct.
How is that possible? It's so small.
So, and funny, we're a half a mile apart from each other on the same road.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not. So Staten Island is probably, I wouldn't say rural, but the most, suburban area out of the 5 boroughs in New York City. We actually have some wooded areas. It's the least populated area. It's the least populated borough. I think we have about 400,000 people on the island. So we're pretty much a red borough, so to speak. So there are a lot of gun owners on Staten Island. We're very conservative. So we do pretty well between the two clubs. We probably got over 1,000 members.
That's impressive.
It's an outdoor club also. We have an outdoor rifle range out to 200 yards, which a 200-yard range in New York City. That's impressive.
Yeah, but you probably have a lot of things you've got to contend with to make sure that place doesn't get closed down.
Yes, right? Correct. Yeah, because we are pretty much completely surrounded. We have a shopping center about 800 yards away from our fence line. To our right, we have an old historic mansion, uh, the Kreischer Mansion. Staten Island was big in making bricks. Had brick factories back in the 1800s. So one of the families, the Kreischer family that owned the factory, they built a huge mansion for the family to live in, and that's right next to our property. We also have a bus depot on the other side. To our left, we have a recording studio. So, I mean, we're pretty much surrounded. So we have to contend with, safety is absolutely paramount. We got to make sure nothing leaves that range. So we
Hmm.
got baffle systems all over the place. We got a lot of strict rules. So, plus, we deal with, the local politicians. We deal with the NYPD. So we have a lot of things to contend with to make sure the range stays open.
Yeah, I could imagine that. Yeah, we have a club here not too far from me that has kind of the same thing. Properties around the subdivisions and properties developed around the range.
Yep.
So they have baffles, and it's been pigeonholed. It could have been a much better range than it is because they had to dig down. They couldn't move dirt around. They had to go dig down to get their
Wow.
bays,
Hmm.
but then they had to still put baffles up, and they can't ever expand. So I mean, and then the sad part is as their membership dies, no one really joins their club because like they always see it's like, well, it's gonna end at some point because someone's gonna be like, we gotta get this place shut down so we can put a house or three here. I mean, and these are big ass houses too around here too, so it's
Right.
is what
Yeah.
it is. But I can
Yeah.
understand the baffle system.
Yeah, we're actually experiencing a boom in membership
Hmm.
now that New York City started issuing concealed carry permits. So we're getting a lot of people now getting their concealed carry permits. They're actually joining a range, coming down to practice, which is a good and a bad thing. We like getting new members, but we prefer to have safe members. People that want to come down on a regular basis and practice, not the once a year members. But we're getting a lot of those.
Yeah, I
So,
can understand that. So you speak of that about New York issuing more concealed carry permits. I mean, for you, it was probably nightmares. I think I listened to that a little bit about it when you were on Brian Conley's show.
yep.
A lot of money and a lot of nightmares and having to hoops to jump through. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's quite a bit of money. It's a nightmare, and the nightmare is actually continuing.
hmm.
They actually, New York City recently made a change. So we had before they started issuing concealed carry permits, we had what was called a premise permit. That was a permit that allowed us to keep pistols on our premises, so we can keep them in our house, go to and from the range, and that was pretty much it. So when they came out with started issuing the carry permits, that was a separate permit you had to get for a carry permit, and you're only allowed to put two guns on that permit. So I had to pick, two guns that I was going to carry, or and they put it on the permit. The make, model, serial number is actually on the back of the permit. So now I got two permits. They're $340 each. Plus, I also have a long gun permit. So, but now what they did was they decided that they lifted that two gun limit on your carry permit, and now I can move all the firearms, all the pistols that I have onto the carry permit. So I can eliminate the premise permit. So they actually did something good, but uh, the last time I tried to do this, I tried to do it in August to try to get all my firearms moved over to my carry permit. I was told by the NYPD they ran out of cards to print.
I guess that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, so the girl that I talked to down there, she's like, "I'm sorry, but we ran out of supplies. We don't have any cards. They're on order. We don't know when they're coming in." So
Well, that could be a real pinch, right? So, yeah, originally you put two guns on your carry permit, and then what happens when you don't like that gun anymore? You want to
exactly
get a new one. It
right.
sucks.
Yeah, it takes months. So the process would be you have to call them up and say, "Hey, I want to switch, guns. Or take one off, put one on," and it takes months before you get that done and before you get a new permit.
Yeah, that's infuriating. I mean,
Yes, yes, it is.
yeah. Well, it could be even worse. Like, oh, your premise permit, you have to put two guns on there. Well, great. Now I've got my main gun and my backup gun. I can't ever shoot another division.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, you came in shooting, started USPSA at your club roughly 7 years ago.
Yep.
Did you come in shooting production?
So when I shot the match at the other club, I actually shot open, and I forgot why. I think it was a Glock. Maybe he had a comp on it, or whatever the reason. I had to shoot open. I don't remember if it was a Magwell. So my first match, my first classification, my first classified that I shot was an open. So after that, and I got bit by the bug, it was like, what can I buy? So
Hmm.
and I ended up buying an MMP, the original, the Performance Center, the 9L, the core. So I was able to put an optic on it. So I threw a vortex on it. And so my first actual division that I really started shooting was carry optics. So that was my original division.
Hmm.
My eyes are terrible. I wear contacts. So I never really cared for the iron sight divisions because I just wasn't really good at it because of my eyesight. So I found I liked the shooting a dot a lot better. So that's
Yeah.
why I kind of gravitated to carry optics. And at the time, carry optics was a 10-round division. This was before they changed the rules, and I liked it much better, honestly.
Well, it was fair because everyone in your state and everyone around you was still shooting 10 rounds. It wasn't
That is
just the
correct.
New York special.
That is correct. Right. Right now, I shoot open 10. So
Well, at least you're shooting open 10 against everybody else in there, right?
that's true. Yep.
It's very sad. Now, the question is, do you have big sticks or are they all short mags?
I have both. I have a trailer that I own in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, yeah, it's a free state,
Yep.
so I keep all that stuff over there.
Yeah, because we have Canadian. So I'm in Michigan, and we have a plenty of Canadian IPSC shooters who will come across the bridge in Detroit and come shoot matches. And it's more sad the fact that they've got to rivet their mags at the end of the match, or it's they when they get there they drill them out when they get on the range, and I'm like, that's cool. There's a couple of my friends, they have a perfectly sized Milwaukee drill to drill them out, and then a battery powered Milwaukee rivet gun, so they can rivet
And they
it.
keep that with them.
Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy, but I definitely know the feeling.
Yeah, but at least I told them, I was like, why don't you just leave those things? Like, I can give you mags when you're here. Wink,
Right.
wink, 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 wink. But God, that's just such. Well, but it makes more sense is that they rivet them all, and it makes sense so they don't ever worry about getting stopped. I
Right.
think it's more the problem is going home. It's the United States will give them more grief than it will be coming into the country.
Okay.
But yeah. Now, do you have a lot of where you're at? Do you have a lot of Canadian shooters who will come across?
No, not really. I think we're too far south from the border. So we really don't get too many Canadian shooters. I know. Oh, so in the area, I know, like up in Maine, New Hampshire, I know they get Canadian shooters that come down, but down here we really don't get too many.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, a lot of people are scared to come into New York City with firearms.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you're allowed to travel through, and we are an authorized range, so you can stop at the range and shoot at the range. So we're not breaking any laws. We're doing everything by the book. So, but you can go, come to the range and then, leave, basically, is the way it goes. So
Right.
we get a lot of shooters basically from New Jersey, really.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've heard some horror stories about people having to go to JFK and then taking possession of their firearms, like their
Yes,
case, because that's more of the biggest probably concern or issue with
that's
NYC.
the biggest issue. Absolutely do not fly into JFK or LaGuardia with firearms
Yeah.
because you don't deal with TSA, you deal with the Port Authority police.
Ugh.
Yes, which they are much more stricter and by the book. So if you had to fly anywhere near the New York area, you'd want to fly into Jersey, into Newark.
Yeah. Newark or isn't Teterboro in New Jersey as well? Or am I?
Teterboro also, yep, that's one of the smaller airports in North Jersey. But yeah, and I would not fly into New York with a
Yeah.
firearm.
The
New,
closest I ever got to New York was flying into Newark for a work trip. And I
okay.
was like, I was flying, and as soon as I landed, I texted one of the guys I know who shoots. He I think it was Matt Hempel. He lives
Hmm.
in New Jersey. And I'm like,
Yep.
your state sucks. No one knows how to drive, and it's like it was bad. And then he never got back to me.
Yeah, Newark is definitely much easier to fly into and out of. That's the airport that I go to. It's also happens to be the closest one to my house. But when I flew down to Talladega, that's where I fly out of. It's so much easier.
Yeah, I could imagine that. I definitely could imagine that. Oh, the weird thing about Jersey though is the fact that you can't pump your own gas.
Yes, I think that's the only state left in the country.
It's
Uh,
bizarre.
yeah, I
But
believe there was two. I forgot what the other state was, but I think they changed it. So that is the only state left in the country where you're not allowed to pump your own gas.
yeah, well, and then you got to make sure to tell the person you've got a performance car. You're like the middle one or the end one. Don't
Right.
use the cheap shit. Like
Yeah, yeah.
Glad I don't have that. I don't ever have that issue. I'm not that fancy. I have race guns, not race cars.
Now race cars, yes.
Yeah.
I think race cars are so much more expensive.
Yeah, but you know what the interesting part is? I've met more people through the shooting sports who started in racing that then have moved over to shooting, like practical shooting. Because
Yeah,
they've got burnt out and
that's
cheaper.
interesting. I know a lot of people that started in shooting that went to race cars also. There's a bunch of guys in my club, who have race cars and high performance cars. So yeah, that is interesting.
So you shot production at 10 rounds. Well, not production. Carry
Or
optics in
optics,
10
yeah.
rounds. Well, nothing's really changed when you shoot carry optics at home, which isn't bad.
Correct.
Do you think, looking at all of it now, right? So we'll call them the free states get to shoot their 140 magazines. Well, hold up. So can you have Can you have an extension on your magazine, or does it have to be like a factory magazine in New York?
No, you could have an extension, but it's got to be plugged or riveted, to 10
Gotcha.
rounds. Right.
Okay. So you can still get the length, which is
Yes.
nice. So then you're
Correct.
not trying to.
Right. So what they accept is I could actually buy an extended magazine, but I have to get a certificate or a letter from a gunsmith that says they modified it to 10 rounds.
Yeah, just more ribbon cutting, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of talk lately about, what's the future of carry optics and limited optics. In your opinion, did we make the right call in making carry optics a 140 millimeter magazine division after it was a provisional division?
So I mean, you're asking someone from a 10 round state. So, but I mean, overall, I think yes. The carry optics is now the most popular division. Before limited optics came around, it seemed like that was the division that everybody was shooting. It grew in popularity very, very quickly. After we changed that and we allowed the 140 magazine, 140 millimeter magazine. So yeah, and I probably say yes. I'm a little bit biased because I would like to see everyone in the same playing field and go
Mm-hmm.
through the same agony that I do with 10 rounds. But no, I think that was the right call.
Yeah. Now we see a lot of everyone's talking. Well, I wouldn't say everyone's talking. It seems like the buzz has died down, but limited optics versus carry optics. I mean, is there really a difference? We see a lot of carry optics shooters who will switch over after nationals and shoot limited optics because they can. They have the same. It's pretty much they can run the same gear because they're not
Right.
running race guns.
Right. So what? That's an interesting topic. I recently at Open Nationals, I got to shoot MPA's newest limited optic gun. I forget which one it is. I don't remember the name of the model, but I
I
had
want
a
to say they
chance.
call it the LOC V2. I want to think
That
limited
sounds
optics
yeah.
competition.
That sounds right. So I had a chance to shoot that, and man, it almost shoots like an open gun.
Mm-hmm.
So, and after shooting that, I'm like, the data tells us that there really isn't much difference between carry optics and limited optics, but that gun definitely shoots way better than my Shadow 2. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Well, so here's a good question, right? So you're used to a Shadow 2,
Right.
and the MPA's got a relatively similar grip angle to a Shadow 2 with.
Mhm.
Do you think you could probably get the same kind of performance out of a DWX that you did out of the MPA because it has the straight trigger system like a 2011, but it still feels like a CZ because it kind of is a CZ.
Right. Yeah, maybe.
Just another gun to go buy in New York if you can even get it there.
So, but yeah, I mean, after I got to shoot that gun, I was like, the dot barely moves, it barely lifts, and I was shooting, I think it was factory 115, like Blazer ammo,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, the gun barely lifts, the dot barely moves off the target. I mean, very, very easy to shoot. I'm like,
Right. Now, how comparatively, if you had to think about it, because you probably didn't have your open gun right there with you,
right.
did it weigh more than your open gun?
I think it's slightly under the weight of my open gun.
Okay. Because I have seen some limited optics guns that weigh more than most open guns, which is absurd.
Yes,
Because open guns have all that extra shit on them, and so they're supposed to weigh so much.
exactly.
And are you still shooting a bull armory?
Yes. Yeah, last year or beginning of this year, I actually got the second one. I got the better one, the Ballesteros.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually heavier than the original one I have. So I needed a backup. Basically, is what happened because I had an issue with the first one at Open Nationals last year, and it actually wasn't the gun's fault. It was the guide rod.
Mm.
It comes with that toolless guide rod, and the pin that holds the little lever that pivots actually backed out during the
Ooh.
match. So I wasn't able to finish the match. So I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to shoot open and travel, across the country to shoot open, I probably should have a backup gun.
Yeah, backup guns are important. Like
Yes.
even I have, so I've got my original open gun, which is now my backup. I'm still going to take it even though this D2 is flawless. I have to take it back. It's one of those, don't jinx yourself, because if the
Yep.
time you don't take it's the time that something goes wrong.
Right.
And kind of lost what my train of thought was on my real question on the follow up on that was, here it is. So we know that May is the second full year. As soon as we hit May, limited optics will be provisional, have been for 2 years. So that, by I think the bylaws or a policy,
Mm-hmm.
we've got to either cancel it or make it a real division at this point.
Correct.
Okay. I'm assuming you can say yes, no, or no answer at this, but has the board already been talking about when it comes at May, or is it not even been discussed at this point?
It really hasn't been discussed. I'm just going to assume it's going to become permanent.
Right. And
It's extremely popular.
it is. It really is. I mean, I just wish, other than it, me personally, this is Alex hearing everybody, I really wish that limited optics was more different than carry optics.
Mm-hmm.
I wish there was some, other than the fact that one doesn't follow a production list and it's a race gun.
Right.
Because really, at the end of the day, a Shadow 2 is not much different than a 2011 when it comes to, you only have one double action pull. You can have a nice single action pull. I mean, everyone makes that argument, but I would have loved to seen like one of them be like almost like a production optics style division.
Yep.
And then we have one that's open minor, essentially. You know what I mean? Or limited optics is now, right?
Yeah,
That's
that's something that I would definitely like to bring up and start discussing. I understand carry optics is our most popular division by far, but really, what are the big differences between limited optics and carry optics? I would also like to see more of a difference. I would like to see more of a production optics.
Mm-hmm.
I hesitate on saying this, but basically, eliminating carry optics, in its current form and make it production optics, and then we'll have our limited optic division.
Right. And honestly, you could just update the hit turn LO hit factors into CO hit factors and have to then create new hit factors for this new CO PO.
Right.
I'm just spitballing here. I don't have any insider trading information. I'm just talking out how I would kind of like it as a member, I guess. And because the problem is you say anything on the internet and they're always going to take it as gospel or
Absolutely.
what. But I am glad to see, I'll say this, I'm glad to see that there's only 2 handgun nationals this year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in 2025. So we don't have, I know people are a little upset probably the fact that they've got to lose 100 slots in carry optics nationals to production revolver and single stack people. But
Yep.
well, and you're actually probably going to see less revolver and single stack shooters purely from the fact is they won't get slots. Like, it's hard to get slots for those divisions into nationals other than winning nationals.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's unfortunate. Those. I still think they're great divisions. Those are like the classic divisions. Revolver, single stack. But nobody is interested in shooting them anymore.
Yeah, like one of my friends, he's also an Alex. He's a member of my gun club, Alex Bakken, second at nationals, at handgun nationals and revolver.
Okay.
He can shoot other guns. Surprisingly, he can shoot an open gun pretty quickly, but but he's also the president of the I-Corps board, so he's a revolver nut. And he's like, "How do I get more people to shoot revolver on our I-Corps matches?" I'm like, "Find old people." Like, he has offered me plenty of times to shoot the I-Corps match with his gear, and I'm just like, I'm an open shooter, but I'm not that finicky with my gear. Like, you think everyone says the open shooters are like, oh, they dick with all their crap. No, my gun I don't
fuck it. It's set up, it runs. Like it's
That's
all that
it.
matters.
You set it up and it runs. You don't screw with it.
Yes. But I've seen him spend more time at a practice session dicking with his cylinders, and it's just like it's not worth it. I'm like, no, thank you. But no,
I have a revolver that runs,
yeah.
but I also have a red dot on it.
So well, you just got to start our I-Core matches at your club too. So speaking of the club, that's a good little sidebar, I guess. Other than USPSA, what are there any other disciplines that shoot at your range?
Yeah, we shoot quite a few. So originally, when I started shooting, I guess competitive shooting, I got into the NRA silhouette, small bore silhouette, which is really really hard. Shooting, these little metal animals at 100 yards, offhand with a 22 rifle, is really hard. So I kind of got into that. We also shoot NRA lever action silhouette matches. High-powered rifle. On the pistol side, we shoot bullseye, Bianchi Cup, falling plate type match. That's one of our popular ones. We also shoot a police pistol combat match. I'm also the match director for that one. So yeah, we shoot a different match pretty much every week. We shoot different club matches. On the pistol side, when I eventually got my pistol license, that's what I started getting into, was actually the bullseye shooting. So when I got into USPSA, I was really, really slow. I mean, I could shoot alphas all day long, but I was really slow.
Right. Yeah. And that's a lot of people too. They will get sucked into the alphas when they first start. And they wonder, why am I not getting any better?
Yep.
Your points are good, but you're also forgetting the other half of the equation of, the third one part of DVC is, speed, right?
Speed, exactly.
You got to remember, you got to move.
Yep.
But even if I tell you could be the most accurate shooter, run to a spot, as long as you run efficiently and very fast to the spots, you can actually do pretty decently in our sport.
Yeah, that's true.
Because if you don't put an effort into running, you'll always be slow. But at least if you emphasize the running, you don't have to shoot very fast.
Right. Yeah, that is true. My son is actually getting into shooting now, and he's pretty quick on his feet, so he gets from position to position really quick. But his shooting is slow because he's just starting out. So but he's actually starting to move up in the rankings, in the overall rankings, and I think that's why, because if you move around the course of fire quickly, you'll do okay.
Yeah, it's more interesting because like up here, there's a definite age gap between some competitors, right? We've got the people who just hit senior. They can't move very efficiently and fast, but they can still pull a trigger pretty quick. And they're like, well, I'm still hanging in with you. I'm like, yeah, but I'm also moving a lot faster. But I'm also I'm not anywhere near senior category. And I hope to not be there for a while. Unless, now if I had a time machine, I don't know. Can I get my government ID to say a different day, a different year? Is that okay?
Different year, no. You could have it say a different gender nowadays, but no, not a different year.
Yeah. That's a good. This is from what that statement is. This is a good rabbit hole for me to dive down. So with most board meetings, I think only one has not been live streamed since they've changed the policy. Correct.
Correct.
Well, and then special private meetings, but has the membership that's talked to you about it, have they been really positive of being able to see the live streams? And do you feel it's benefiting the organization as a whole that it's live streamed so people can be more up to date?
I think it's beneficial because we're trying to be as transparent as possible, as much as we can be. So by live streaming the meetings, now everybody can, everything is out in the open, aside from, whatever we have to discuss in executive session. So we're trying to keep everything as open as possible. So, and it also helps that, we got a lot of complaints early on that, our minutes are, lacking. There's not much in there. You have, we open the meeting, you have some motions in there. There's no, notes on discussion or anything like that. And actually minutes are not supposed to be like that. Minutes are not a transcript of the meeting. They're just supposed to be a record of what action the board took. So now that we have the live stream, members could actually see what we're discussing. They could see, the back and forth. They could actually see what's going on, and they could be more informed. on the ones that care.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because as you know, the majority of our members don't care. So, but the ones that actually do care about the sport and the ones that, you know, want to stay up to date and involved, now it gives them an opportunity, you know, to see actually what's going on and to be more involved.
Oh, 100%. Yes, they definitely can be more involved. I'll be honest, I stopped tuning in live for a while because this was probably before you guys, like, we have to do executive session things at the end because it killed meeting flow. And everyone's like, there was always the under over of how many executive sessions we'd have to go into for something. But I was smart enough. I turned in, we're recording this on 10:30 for anyone who actually cares when this is time stamped. But I actually turned in after shooting my Monday night monthly indoor match that I'll say I co match direct. I'm like the third guy. So there's the guy who's the range contact facilities guy who works there. There's the guy who has the USPSA club and all the stats equipment, and then I'm the guy who designs stages and helps, coordinates building.
Okay.
So I'm the third guy. So as I was coming home, I'm like, oh, it's Monday night. It's the very important board meeting to talk. So I actually tuned in, and I tuned in probably right as Yeeman got to Ben's motion for 11.2 or 11.5 for about video evidence, right?
Video evidence, yep.
So, and that was a very, not that I could say this, or you can say this probably too. Not everybody agreed with what everyone else had to say, but there was a good discussion that happened at that point.
Yes.
Which was nice to see, as it wasn't an all in favor and an all opposed. There was dissent between the board, and there was good conversations that we had.
Yep.
Which is nice because that's out in the open now to be seen.
Right. And you know what? I actually think dissent is good. If we got 9 people in the room all with the same opinions, I don't think that's helpful.
Right.
I like to have those discussions, have, people come up with different ideas. So, it's when we don't all agree, that's okay. We don't need to be unanimous.
Right. Well, and then, it feels like you're finally getting a rhythm now with all the board members currently. And then in two months' time, you're going to have 2 new board members.
Yes.
So then you got to start building, rapport with those 2, with Mr. Leif Kunkel and John Burt.
Yep.
So that'll be an interesting transition into January, come January 1st. So, where was I going to go with this? I know I was going to go somewhere with this. Completely off the rails. Let's talk about you. We'll talk about Open Nationals since that was the last Nationals you went. And then I want to dive up to your Area 7 match. I know, although seems like forever ago since your Area 7 match. But
Yep.
So Open Nationals, what did you think of the match?
Overall, I think the match went well. It was a pretty smooth match, no major issues. Some of the complaints I got were people didn't particularly care for the 2 stages in one bay. There were, I think every zone had that. Had one bay with 2 stages in it, so a lot of people really didn't like that. They don't particularly like the stand and shoot stages. We had a number of those. So, overall, it was a challenging match. We had some pretty far poppers, mini poppers, 25, 30-yard mini poppers, which I would expect at an open PCC Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
So it was definitely challenging. Overall, it was okay. I didn't think it was terrible. But it didn't blow me away. Put it that way. No major issues to speak about. There really were no problems. So
Mm-hmm. Now, with some of those, I would agree. Double bays never are fun.
Yep.
But there's always this, nomenclature or theory or thought that a Nationals has to be 21, 17 to 21 stages over 3 days,
Right.
Now, were you fortunate enough to shoot handgun Nationals, or did you stay in New York?
No, I stayed in New York. I'm limited on how much vacation time that I have. So I made the decision just to go to Carry Optics and Open.
Well, luckily enough, Carry Optics was only a couple hours away in Ohio instead of having to take a flight to Alabama.
Correct.
Speaking of Alabama, did you fly into Birmingham or
I flew
somewhere
to
else?
Atlanta.
Oh, Atlanta. So then you drove what? 2 hours?
Yeah, it's about an hour and a half.
Okay, that's not terrible then.
Yeah, the speed limit is like 70 on that highway out there, so you make it an hour and a half. Wasn't too bad.
So it's not like the Autobahn in New York, right?
No.
I if you are driving the speed limit, you are going too slow. I mean, that's also how it is up here.
Yes. So the interesting thing is the time change though, because you're going from Eastern time to Central time. You drive across the time zone.
Yeah. So yes, that is true. One of the interesting things about doing these podcasts is when I talk to people in Central time zone, I've got to like dumb it down. I'm like, I got to explain. Are we doing this in my time zone or your time? When you like, if I got heaven forbid, I had to so I had supposed to have a podcast during the board meeting on the 28th, but I had that local match that I had to run. I'm like, I got to reschedule. So I did it last night, and I talked to the guy when I was rescheduling. I had to make sure I was talking in the right time zones. Just because I'm like, do not want to screw this up when I say, oh, I want this time. And really they mean an hour later because.
Yep.
But hey, we have East Coast privileges. I mean, we get screwed on the end of getting up first, but it's definitely nice when we are the first ones to deal with.
So yeah, I've had to got used to that over the past 2 years from being on the board because now I talk to people all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Area 1 director is all the way, in I think it's in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
I remember right? Yeah, he's all the way in those. So whenever we now have discussions and set up meetings and times and stuff like that, it's always at the end, Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, and then it's like, hey, can we not make this committee meeting super long? Because
Right,
So
because I gotta be up like in 4 hours.
right. So speaking of committee meeting, like, do you actually on most of your committee? How often do you feel you guys are meeting? Because we never see like other than someone. There might be a report out during the minutes. We don't actually know like a schedule of these committees that are actually if they're active or inactive, other than reports.
So some of the committees are more active than others. I am the chair of the audit committee and the bylaw committee. So the audit committee was more active when we were actually in the process of doing our annual audit. But this year was actually a review. We didn't do a full audit. Every 3 years, the organization does a full audit, and on the opposite years, we do a review where they just go over all the numbers and make sure everything is correct. So the audit committee was more active when we were dealing with that firm, the outside firm that did that, having meetings with them, having meetings with our finance guys, and going through all that stuff. So once the audit or the review, I should say, was done, we really haven't met since then because there's no work for the committee to do. On the bylaw committee side, so we met a bunch of times early on in the year after the committee was formed. We had a chance to go through the bylaws and discuss some of the things that we would like to see changed in the bylaws, kind of like a wish list, so to speak. And between the committee, we came up with I think it was a list of about 50 different items that needed to be changed, and then we went through those items and we kind of categorize them as high priority, low priority, medium priority, stuff that we should get to right away, stuff that could wait or may not need to be changed, kind of like a wish list. So we went through that list for a while. We started going through that stuff. Recently we haven't met as often. I would say it's probably been about a month and a half, 2 months since we actually met to go over some of that work, because some other things have come up. Some motions were made during meetings where they were asking for bylaw changes, and they were referred to the committee. So we kind of did a lot of the work through email, just because of scheduling issues. So we, a lot of emails going back and forth, discussing the different bylaw changes, and then once we decide on, the final verbiage of what we'd like to change, then we have to now bring it to our attorney and say, hey, does this work with Delaware law to make sure this is, we could actually do this. So that's how that committee works. So, but as far as actual meeting, no, we probably haven't had an actual meeting in about 2 months.
Gotcha. But there's still being work done, which is nice to hear.
Yes.
Because like I said, it's not very obvious that, the committees are doing work, but it depends on what committee you're on, right? There's
correct.
What, 9 or 10 different committees it seems like now?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different committees. The other committee that I was actually just recently added to was the fee structure committee. So that committee originally met before I was added to the committee, but I was on that committee last year. You may recall when the dues got raised, the fees got raised. That's when I was on that committee, and that was not the recommendation of the committee.
Right.
So that's why I voted against that one.
Yeah, I think a lot of members feel the same way. I feel the pain of the membership. I still have to pay my wife's membership since she's still an annual member, but I have that big old L on the front of my number, which is nice.
Yes.
But I always do that flex. I was an L before it was cool. Before the prices went up and down, I was like, I was already an L. But I already know. I just turned 30 this year, so I already know I'm going to be in the sport I'm going to get money back on my membership because I think they say it like it matures at like 20 years.
20 years, yep.
And I've already been a member for 4, so I'm like, I'm already going to be here long enough unless I do something heinous to get myself booted from the organization, which I don't see happening.
Right.
But,
Yep.
yeah, I'm gonna get my $500 worth. I mean, the org loses money on my membership, but
Yes. Yeah. That was one of the biggest complaints that we've heard, that, on a $500 lifetime membership, the org actually loses money on those.
well, yeah, and then I get my magazine now, and I could give it or take it on the magazine myself. Like I collect them, and then I get 3 of them. The wife's like, "Hey, you need to do something with these," so then they get recycled. But I don't feel bad because I can still access the content or the information on the website.
Yep. So yeah, so the magazine is interesting because I've talked to a lot of the guys in my club who, I have a lot of senior members, a lot of, let's say older folks, who shoot, and I talked to them about the magazine, and I was like, hey, do you actually read those magazines? He goes, oh yeah, absolutely. And I asked them, next question I asked is, if you didn't get the magazine and you just got an email with a link so you could, view the magazine online, would you still read it? Nope. Yeah, I'm not going through all that. I still like to, have an actual magazine in my hand and read through it. So it's kind of
it's a better magazine than like the Blue Press catalog. That's kind of a magazine / catalog.
Yep, I agree.
I think my wife gets more upset that one comes because it's usually like a busty lady on the cover, and I'm like, I'm not the marketing guy. I mean, but it is what it is. At least our magazine's decent to read. I mean,
yeah, I agree.
It's mostly Jake articles, but I mean that's his job. So
yeah.
So oh Lord, I lost my train of thought, but it's okay. So as you said, you were just kind of talking. Your older memberships like the magazine, and I can see that, right? A lot of people. They either they don't care, or they want it or not. I mean, did they there's no price break for being an associate member anymore, right? The backdoor $25 membership we used to have.
Yep.
Well, it was more funny because I actually made a video on that a long time ago about how to click the button to get to the button.
To get to that, right. Yeah, it wasn't obvious how to get to that.
That's because that was my level of membership before I became a life member. I was like, I'm paying $25. I don't want the magazine.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think the $15 difference or the 20, because I think it was like 45,
right?
40. But I mean, you still kind of lose money on the magazine. But I mean, there is part of that for like probably national sponsorship structure with the magazine because you get ads and whatnot too. So
right.
I don't know all the pieces of the puzzle, and I don't think most members do either. But I like the magazine. It's colorful, but it does get recycled. I at least feel good about that.
Well, that's good.
But yeah. Well, now, personally for you, do you care for the magazine, or would you rather just get it digitally?
Me personally, I actually like the magazine. I like getting it. I'm on my phone all day long between emails and phone calls. I have like 4 different email accounts between my work email, my USPSA email, my club email. So anytime I get to put the actual phone down, and pick up a magazine and I actually appreciate that. So I actually like the magazine.
So speaking of that, so I mean, you get to read the magazine. Do you actually still find time to like read physical books, or are you much more of an audio book listener?
I've more gravitated now towards the audio side because I just don't have the time, But when I'm on the bus, I take a bus to work every day. So in the mornings and in the afternoons when I come home, that's when I find the time to listen to podcasts or listen to an audio book, stuff like that.
So speaking of that, do most people like in the boroughs of New York, do most of them not have vehicles?
Most people, well, it depends which borough. In Staten Island, most people have a vehicle. In the other boroughs, like Manhattan and Brooklyn, Queens, most people probably would have like one, but there are definitely a lot of people that don't have a vehicle because you really don't need one, honestly. Without public transportation system, which I work for.
Thank you for checking out another episode of Manny Talks Shooting. I greatly appreciate it. And if you could do me a favor, please go patronize our partners when you are available. We have always, as the title sponsor, D2 Custom Guns. We've got Outdoor Dynamics, Make Stuff Better, 2 Alpha Apparel, Range Panda, Laugh and Load, Hunter's HD Gold, and Southern Bobby Q. Now, thank you. Let's get on with this episode.
Yes, I work in the subway system, so yeah, for the most part, if you live in one of those boroughs, in Brooklyn or Manhattan, you really don't need a car. You could get pretty much anywhere in the city with our public transportation system.
Gotcha. Well, it's more funny because there's 2 board of directors who work for public transportation systems in their area. That's kind of interesting. You and Mr. Erickson.
Yep.
Which is funny. I recorded with him, I want to say last week or the week before, and I was a dummy and I deleted the file before I got it into an editor. So I lost it all, and which is more funny. On his podcast, he lost his files too for his podcast. So I was like, "Oh, great! This is just bad juju going around."
Yeah.
But yeah. So as you said, if you live in a bigger, one of the other boroughs, you pretty much just use public transportation.
Yeah.
So with that, do you ever feel like the subway is overly crowded sometimes?
Honestly, since COVID, I think a lot of people stopped using the subway. They stopped using. I mean, it's come back. Our numbers have definitely come back up, but we still haven't reached the pre-COVID numbers. Yeah, between the subway and the bus system, I think we moved something like 5-6 million people a day. So yeah, it's during the rush hour that they used to get crowded, but not like they used to.
Yeah. Now, can people? I don't know if you can comment on this or not, so I don't feel offended if you can't comment on this. Do you feel that most of your passengers or the passengers of the subway feel safe on the subway?
I think the majority do, but I think there are still a lot of people that don't feel safe. Because there is still quite a bit of crime in the subway system. We have a lot of homeless that live in the subway system. We have I see it every day. We have people, they jump the turnstiles, they don't pay to get in, and usually those are the ones that are committing the crimes down there.
Right. Yeah. So have you found lots of pizza boxes down there in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Only if I only wish that was really true. Like there was a Mutant Ninja Turtles on the subway getting pizza. But yeah, so I and I'm assuming your department has to deal with NYPD on a fairly regular basis down there in the subways.
Yes, we do. So I'm actually a supervisor, but I no longer actually work in the subway on a regular basis. I work in the office. I'm actually I'm
above ground.
Yes, I'm above ground, which is good. And I work Monday to Friday now, and I'm in the Department of Policy and Procedures. So I actually write the rules now.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, you pretty much can't get away from writing rules or policies and changes. And
that is correct. So, but one of the things that I've recently started doing is NYPD has started doing active shooter training in the subway. So we have stations that are like decommissioned stations that are not used anymore. So we go to an old station, we bring a train to them, and they do all different kind of active shooter drills, to prepare for anything like that.
And I'm assuming they're using like a Sims or a UTM pistols at that point. Or
yeah, they're using Sim pistols. They have the vests on, where they get feedback. So it's been interesting.
That is pretty cool. I bet that'd be pretty cool to witness or watch the training go down.
It is, especially from my perspective, where I actually know how to shoot, and I watch some of these, NYPD guys, who really aren't, into firearms that much. And honestly, they really don't get as much training as they probably should when it comes to the use of a firearm. So, and I'm watching them with these sim guns, and I'm looking at their grip, and I'm looking at the stance, and I'm like, and I'm sitting there biting my tongue, like, I can't say anything.
Just leave them your gun club business cards.
Exactly.
Be like, come find me.
Yes, I can help you. I promise.
Right. Now, speaking of that, do you have a lot of NYPD officers who are members out in Staten Island at the club?
I wouldn't say a lot, but we have a fair number. We do have officers who are actually interested in getting better at shooting. So, and they join the club to practice. When I first joined the club, there definitely was a lot more. And I always like to joke around. They were the worst shots in our club, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
You watch a cop shoot, you could tell right away that it's a cop. The rounds are going everywhere.
Right. Well, and in their academy, they're taught to pass the qualification, not to
Correct.
actually be good. And a lot of officers aren't firearms enthusiasts. They don't care about the firearm in their job. It's a tool that they have to use.
Exactly.
And
That's the vast majority of NYPD officers. They could care less about firearms. It's just another tool. They do what they have to do to qualify every 6 months, and that's it.
they just want to make sure they go home at the end of the day.
Yep, exactly.
So diving back towards your daily job, with policies and procedures and writing those as a supervisor. Were you doing that prior to being a wizard in the Robert's Rules of Order, or which came first, the chicken or the egg?
No, Robert's Rules came first. So when I first joined the club, it was probably about 2 years later that I got asked to join the board, basically because a position opened up on the board that nobody wanted to take. It was running the biweekly work parties. So that means you had to actually be at the club. Every couple of weeks you run the work parties. You get stuff done. You're responsible for the maintenance of the range. So it's a lot of work. At the time, I wasn't married. So I really didn't have many commitments. So I said, sure, I'll do it. And then when I sat on the board, it was interesting because, they're using all these, making motions and using all these terms that I had no clue what they were talking about. Things being out of order and, making motions and calling votes and doing all this stuff. And that's when I'm like, I probably should read a book on this and figure this out. That's when I bought my first Robert's Rules of Order book and started reading through it. And it's not easy to read through Robert's Rules.
No, it's not. And I'm definitely still tackling that myself.
Yes.
I myself this year became the secretary of our gun club up here, and motions and a lot of parliamentary stuff is like lax here, and it's a problem. It's like they're like, someone will make a motion, they'll get a second, they'll do a vote on it, but then 3 seconds later they want to change what their motion really was instead of amending them. It's like,
yep, yeah,
I understand what you want, but it's not how this works.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
Well, and just even how our minutes were kept. Our minutes were like almost a story of like what was told. No, nothing. No motions. No, no motions. No second. It was just like, Lord have mercy. And people are like, why are the people email me since I have the club email access now? Like, why are the minutes so different? I'm like, because I needed to actually say something.
Yep.
What we actually did.
Yep. So, but yeah, that's when I first got really interested in it, and then I kind of enjoyed it actually. Through that stuff, reading through the parliamentary procedures, and so that's I read some books on it, and I started actually learning it, and now I was able to actually use this stuff during the meeting, and it definitely comes in handy. Especially when you want to get something done, or someone else is trying to get something passed that is not right. Now I would know what to do.
Right. Well, and it was good to see, like, even on the live meeting I watched a little bit on Monday, Mr. President Yeeman asked you for clarification or what was the actual proper way of about it, because of dealing with Ben's motion.
Yep.
And then Dan's motion. And it was like, it was good to see that there was the willingness to be more correct.
Yes, that is definitely one thing about our president. He does want to do everything the right way. So yeah, he's told me that many times. He's like, I'm going to ask your opinion. I'm going to reach out to you because I'm not sure if we're doing this right. I was like, yep, just let me know. So and I don't pretend to know everything because Robert's Rules of Order is very complex.
It's a thick book still.
It is. So I don't know everything, and there are times that actually Ben has corrected me. We were going through. I don't remember. It was a couple of months ago. We were going through something. And I said something about the procedure, and Ben was like, "No, I don't think that's the way it is. I think it's like this." And then, I keep my Robert's Rules of Order book right next to me, and I'm like, I looked it up real quick. I'm like, "Yep, he's right."
Yeah, and that's if you have insomnia, start reading.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You'll get put to sleep pretty quick.
Yep.
So speaking of, a little bit of our president, and the board made a motion, or I think they even passed to strip powers from our president. Personally, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that personally of, taking the power away from our duly elected USPSA president? And this is absolutely okay to say no comment. I mean, this is absolutely fine if you don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
I think in this case, I will say no comment.
That's fine. I have my own opinions on it, and I can understand to an extent of why they wanted it's written in there now, but I think it's unfortunate because the membership elects the president to lead, and then it gets taken away. But it all depends on who the president is and what needs to be done. So I don't blame the board for doing what they think is best for the org, because that's what they need to do. They need to make sure the org is still here, right? I mean,
right.
Like we talk about financially, financials have always been a thing, and I mean, we want to make sure that this thing is here for my kids or my kids' kids, and I mean, this sport is cool. I mean, that's why we diverted away from IPSC. We are something different. We are something. We're USPSA. We have people-shaped targets.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, and I can understand when people say, "Well, we want to get real sponsorship, right? We're using the IPSC targets or the turtles or whatever you want to call them."
Right.
I mean, I would love if there was a way to make the sport watchable. Kind of like, I mean, I love what John Scouten's doing with the live stream or the live stage showing. I love it more than, we're going to follow the Super Squad around and you're going to watch it in 6 to 7 months after it happened.
Yep.
I love it. I get to watch it in about a week, and I can watch things that I'm interested in watching. I mean, I got to watch the Super Squad. I mean, I wish I would have been able to watch all the Super Squads on all the stages, but John just doesn't have the money or the crew to do it.
Right.
And we didn't want to pay for more of that. I mean, it was already a lot. It was already a big chunk of change.
Exactly. Yeah, I think what he's doing now is definitely it's a definite improvement. I like it. So it's the last one I watched. He did introductions. Where everyone got to introduce themselves, where they were from, what division they were shooting. Which was cool. You got to follow them around. While they were shooting the stage. And I think it was like that night he edited it, and it was posted by like the next morning. So which is cool. Yeah.
You get to put names to faces. Like, some people don't know who Max Leograndis is. What he looks like. They might know, this guy on the leaderboards. But like we said, most of our membership doesn't read the magazine. They don't care what happens, from the day-to-day operations. They just go to shoot. So they don't even know who or care to keep up with practice scores on who wins nationals, right?
Right.
But it's cool to see.
Not like us that are sitting there hitting refresh on a competitor, right?
Yeah, looking at competitor and see what's going on, and your buddies that you're heckling. That's like, hey, you suck.
Yep.
So, but the one thing I noticed is like it was very apparent in the ladies. We'll call it the ladies super squad at Open PCC Nationals. Audio listeners, I am air quoting ladies super squad, not the super part, but the ladies part. But John Scouten gets called out by like Lena Michalik as he's like watching targets and whatnot, and and Lena's like, "You're kind of talking kind of loud," and then he straightened it up because he stopped, but he was also calling the time before the R, like it was unloaded, showed clear, and the RO called the time. So in all reality, you could almost call interference on like some form of coaching or interference towards a shooter, because sometimes say there's a bad call, right, or there's an interference by the RO or for some reason, and then you get the time, and it's like part of the equation to say
right, to
not be asked, well, did you get interfered with? And I can understand where I can't say I don't think somebody on our super squads would take advantage of that after shooting a very bad run and then asking for an interference to get a reshoot.
Yep.
I mean, no one's going home with the Mary Kay Pink Cadillac. Not even Christian Seiler, guys.
Yep.
No one's going home with it. But I could see somebody someday be like, yeah, I got interfered with. John was talking too loud. He was throwing me off my shooting. I found out my time before we were done, and I was able to make decisions upon that. And then you've got the competitive equity part about it. But
yeah, you know what? I think this is new for John. Also, he just started doing this stuff, so it's a learning curve. I did see that one, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
After, I mean, he did sound kind of loud, even with his commentary while Lena was shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw her after she was done. She's like, you were kind of loud.
Yeah, and I made mention of that, but then I noticed, because then PCC Super Squad would have came through, and then Open Super Squad would have finished there,
Right.
and those two last squads were pretty much ran differently behind the mic than the Ladies Super Squad, which was cool to see that. He's like, oh yeah, I took note of that, so he did correct that. So,
Yep.
I mean, you never know. Someone could use anything to, I mean, I haven't seen anybody arb anything lately. I mean, there's been no spicy arguments about things like that. I mean, there's always the call here or there that you don't agree with, but no one who was ever angry enough to throw their $100 down.
Yeah, I haven't heard of any recently. I think there was almost one at Optics, and I think I got selected for the ARB committee, and I didn't know about it.
Well,
My
good thing you
phone,
didn't need.
yes, 'cause my phone was ringing off the hook. But they were able to settle it before it actually went to ARB.
Gotcha. Probably a give and reshoot because something was wrong. So.
Yep.
And that's always the better option is figure it out before you got to escalate it and fill out a form. And I mean, as a CRO, you go through learning about the ARB committee, but no one really knows how it's spelled out in the rules what they have to do, but it's so infrequent. Like it's like you need like the three guys in the sport who know about,
Right.
know how to do an ARB who've like, yeah, I'm always on the ARB committee.
Yep.
But it is what it is.
Yep.
But speaking of nationals, how was the members meeting at Open PCC Nationals?
It wasn't bad. I would like to, have as many members come out as possible, honestly, but unfortunately, that's not the way it works.
Right.
Most, I don't want to say they're not interested, but a lot of members have said that they feel like, when they come to these meetings and they voice their concerns, that they're not actually being heard. Which is unfortunate, because, I try to listen to the members' feedback as much as possible and take action on it. So, I mean, we didn't have a real big turnout. I think it was, maybe like 15 members, somewhere around there that actually came to the meeting. But we did have Luke Faust from Area 3. He came to the meeting and, he asked some good questions of the board. He asked some tough questions. And I think he got his point across. He got it out there, that they're not happy in Area 3, and rightfully so.
Right. This is true. They're not happy. Their duly elected area director got removed. I mean, that's a big thing. And I mean, it's kind of nice to see now that they've actually next year there's some actual USPSA matches going on for like their bigger matches. I mean, there might not be level 2s yet, but they're back to being level 1s. So, I mean, everyone's got their right and how they want to express themselves on that, I guess. And, I mean, I'm glad we have the right to do so. I mean, it's not like the org's like, you must run that match as a level 2. It was like that in the past. No one's breathing down their neck. I mean, the org, at the end of the day, at least they're paying their activity fees and like the org is still allowed to function. I mean, I was really concerned with the protests in the beginning of 2024 that, I mean, we might not be able to, we might not be around for as much longer as we thought, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, the board's actions caused it, and they had every right, to protest, and I agree with them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it was an issue, and it became an issue in my area too. At the beginning of the year was the first meeting we live streamed when they threw me off the board.
God, that was a whirlwind 72 hours.
Yes,
oh,
it
my
was.
Lord.
Yes, it was. So, I mean, there were a whole bunch of clubs that reached out to me from the area that said they are no longer running USPSA matches. And there are some of them that are still not, actually. There are some clubs up in the northern areas that are no longer running USPSA matches, and they're still selling out every match.
Right. So. Well, and which is interesting. Like there's a lot of different demographics in our, over the nation, right? You've got clubs with high amount of membership, but not a lot of clubs.
Right.
And then you've got a lot of clubs and not necessarily a lot of membership to support all those clubs. So you see everyone traveling around, or you just don't see a lot of clubs or close and you don't have a lot of members. Like here in Area 5 in Michigan in particular, you will see about the same 20 traveling shooters to like most every weekend, you're going to see them bounce around because from me, the closest club is like just under an hour, and then it spans to what I'm really willing to drive to is like 2 hours from my house.
Okay.
And I mean, that's all highway driving. It's not like your 2 hours. That's I got to go 4 blocks.
Right. That would be my 2 hours.
Yeah.
So the 2 hours of highway driving, that's a distance.
Yeah. Which, and they're all good matches. And I can't complain. I haven't been to quote unquote, a terrible match. I always do have this higher level of like expectations because when I was really a part of like match directing an outdoor club, we had very high standards for the quality we put out in the challenges. No one really liked shooting 35-yard mini poppers, but it made me better to go to major matches. Like when you see those kind of skills being tested, like when you go to nationals and you're like, oh, that 35-yard, tuxedo or half target. I'm not very scared of that target. I mean, you respect the target, but you're not afraid of it.
Yeah, I got yelled at quite a bit because I run the match at my club, and when I put a 25-yard tuxedo, I still get yelled at. You're like, damn, what match director put that target out there?
Your area director, leave him be.
Exactly. So, but I try not to do that too often because you do have to kind of cater to what the shooters want. So
Right.
I don't do that too often, but I do like to put challenging things in the stages. Tuxedos on a swinger, but maybe I'll move the distance a little bit closer.
Right. Well,
stuff
and
like that.
for yours, can you still shoot like a normal outside bay for the most part at your club? Okay.
Yeah, so we have 3 bays. They aren't terribly big. The depth is maybe 75, 80 feet.
Okay. So you can get about a 25-yard shot then, roughly.
Yes, right. So and they aren't very wide either. But we were able to get 3 bays in there. And then I had another bay put in 2 years ago. So, and then we have the pistol side of our range. We have a 50-yard pistol range. We shut that whole side of the range down. We put one big stage in there. So we're able to run a 5-stage match, with all independent stages.
Gotcha. That's nice, though. At least you can still get a 5-stage match.
Yes.
And then you partner up for the
Staten Island Championship, yes. So with the other club that's right down the road, we run 5 stages at my club, 5 stages at the other club. So, you have lunch in between, and then you drive over to the other club and finish the match. 1-day match, you do 10 stages.
Yeah, that's definitely got to be can be a nightmare for people to have to think about that. Be like transporting their firearms between the ranges and just making sure they're in the right spot, or don't double park somebody because they need to leave too.
Yes. So yeah, we've gotten it down to a science. I mean, we've gotten really good at this now. This is I probably think the 4th year we've done it this year. So it's gotten coordinated where everybody now knows do not leave the range until you're told to do so. So we make sure we try to stay on the same schedule. Everyone has lunch at the same time, and we try to have everybody swap at the same time. So everyone is in the, it's one of these days. I think next year I got to get my drone up in the air and record it because it's something to watch. Everyone's in their car ready to go, and we have everybody pile out, and we have a line of cars outside our gate waiting to come in. It's like everybody out. Once the last car is out, everyone starts piling in, and now, it actually goes pretty smooth.
Do you get NYPD to block the road while you do this?
No. we have
nice,
not. It would be nice, yes, but it actually goes pretty quick. It's probably within 15 minutes.
Okay.
We're done because, like I said, we're only half a mile apart, right down the same road.
Right. That definitely makes it better.
Yes.
So before we kind of get this wrapped up, I do want to talk about, Area 7.
Yep.
Other than being the area director, how heavily involved were you in planning and organization of the match?
So I was involved in the match. I told the guys up. So the Area 7 match this year was at the 6 Hour Academy. 6 Hour has a unbelievable facility up there in New Hampshire. The last time the match was up there, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I think it was 2013. So it's been a while, and since then they've made a lot of improvements to the ranges that they have there on the property. So it's a different facility from when it was held there last. So my original intention, to be very honest with you, was to have the match in New York. Because we have a range in Long Island, New York, that can absolutely run a area match. It's big enough that we have the staff to do it. The drawback would have been every division would have been 10 rounds. So, we had no intention on having a Colorado situation, so it was going to be everyone on the same playing field. You may not like it, but you're going to be shooting open 10.
Right. Well, yeah,
So,
and you're in one of the boroughs, right? Because Long
right.
Island is it?
Well, no, this Long Island is not the boroughs.
Okay.
No, it's Nassau County. Actually, that was Suffolk County.
Okay. So it's right next to New York City, but not.
Yes.
Okay.
So that was the only complaint that nobody wanted to come to New York. It wasn't about shooting open 10 or carry optic 10 or none of that. Those weren't the complaints I got. It was just people didn't want to come to New York.
Right.
So, but most of the people that I talked to were cool with it at the time. But the range had some concerns about holding the match there. They didn't want people to come in and get in any kind of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
If you bring because we're not the police, so we're not going to enforce you bring in your high cap magazine as long as you don't load 10. That's on you. So
Right.
they had some concerns with we don't want to have any issues. So they decided what, maybe it's better if they have it somewhere else. So that's when I reached out to SIG because they had expressed interest in having the area championship.
Mm-hmm.
So and since it's in New Hampshire, it's probably about 4 to 5 hours from me. I figure it's best that the guys who up there who run the matches, that's their job. That's their full-time job. They're the competition directors for 6 hour. So I was like, what, you guys, you run the match, you be the match director, but, just keep me in the loop of everything that's going on. This way I have an idea. So I was involved, they kept me in the loop. So I knew exactly what was going on. I handled the sponsorships. I reached out to the companies to get all the different sponsors. So I took care of that. So that was pretty much my level of involvement.
Mm-hmm. And did you end up working the match, or did you just shoot the match?
I offered to work the match many, many times, and they told me, nope, you're the area director. You need to be out there, talking to people and, shaking hands, kissing babies, talk to the members and get, that's, they were kind enough to let me do that. So I was, I rode around with the range master, and I was basically out there on the range all day. But I didn't actually work the match. They got a huge turnout of staff. A lot of people volunteered to help run the match, so much so that it was the first match we've ever done in the area that was staff reset.
Wow, that's a lot of staff there.
They got a lot of staff. They definitely got a lot of help, and it was great. The match was fantastic. I think it was the biggest. Again, don't quote me because I don't know all the numbers, but I'm pretty sure it was one of the biggest area matches we've ever had. It was well over 430 something shooters.
It's impressive.
Yeah. It was well done.
Yeah, and it's one of those benefits of being a highly densely populated area.
Yes.
I mean, even in New Hampshire, everyone had to go to New Hampshire, but still, like Area 7, even though you don't have many sections or states in your area, you have a lot of bodies.
Correct. And the good thing about New Hampshire is it is probably the most central place in the area. The year before we had the area match up in Maine. State
number one. State all the way at the corner.
Exactly. It's far. It's like a 10-hour drive for me.
Oh,
so
that's got to be rough.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay. It's 5 hours to get out of New York, but
but yeah, so we didn't get a big turnout at that match, and it was mainly for that reason. People from my area, from the city area, folks from New Jersey, which is Area 8, would normally travel to the Area 7 match. Nobody wanted to drive 10 hours. So
that's how I feel about Alabama. So
yep. So when the match moved to New Hampshire, well, it's now a 4-hour drive, 4.5-hour drive, from the city, or, roughly 5 hours ish from New Jersey. So you're pretty much literally right in the middle of the area. So the match filled up pretty quickly, and, we got a really big turnout, and I think it just happens to be because of the location. That's why.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that the location worked out and everyone enjoyed the match. I didn't see too much hullabaloo from during or after matches. I mean, there was, I think, one thing about a call that somebody didn't like, and I mean, it happens at every match. There's always going to be
happens at every match. It's unfortunate, but that was actually one of the driving factors for me to recommend to the rules committee to investigate the use of video.
Mm-hmm.
So I was actually on that stage when it happened, believe it or not.
Oh,
So
so
I
of
didn't.
course they're jumping your crap too,
I
right?
wasn't watching the shooter, but my back was to the stage, but I was there. So I saw the aftermath, and I was there for the whole thing, and I got to see the video on his phone, right after it happened. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, and after that, I was like, I originally I was against video. I really wasn't in favor of it, but I've been seeing, a lot of circumstances, that being one of them, where, what, let's get the call right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of drawbacks to video. We don't want to slow the match down. The video could be edited. Now with the video editing programs, it could be edited really quickly.
Right.
So, there's a lot of things that need to be worked out, but, I think it's more important that we get the call right.
And I don't disagree with you on getting the call right, but when I mean, as you've worked many matches, there's things that DQs slow the whole rotation down, and
Yep.
I think as long as the rules committee comes up with something, and the board can agree on it, on a how to implement it to make it fair, equitable, and repeatable.
Yep.
I think that's what we need to happen, because I think we need to add it, but like you said, video can be edited fairly quickly. Angles are super important.
Yep.
This is why, I'd never ask a shooter to record for me. My camera is a GoPro. If you've ever met Chris Galnett, wears all orange all the time, shoots open.
Yep. I know Chris.
So he did this. He does the GoPro Skycam,
Right.
and I got that from him. And I'm like, I don't have to ask a squad member to not paste. So that with the hold them, they're holding. I don't need them to hold the phone, so they can go paste targets.
Yep.
Throw it up in the air, and that's how it's it. Most of the time, you try to get it 100% like behind the shooter, but angles are important and try to actually see stuff. But that's why I always do the Skycam. It tells a lot.
Yeah, so I mean that was originally one of the things why I was against the video. Depending on what angle you shoot the video from, sometimes it could be very difficult to tell a 180. Depending on what angle. So that was one of the reasons I originally was against it, and also competitive equity. I take that seriously. Unless we're going to video every single competitor. How is it fair to the guy that, doesn't have anybody to video for him, or, maybe he doesn't have a smartphone? How is that equitable to him? So,
Right.
but the more I started thinking about it, I was like, well, you know what? If you want to take it seriously, that may have to become part of your equipment now. If you're going to shoot at a high level, you're going to travel to shoot, major matches, some kind of video recording device may become part of your equipment that you bring with you.
Right. And it's just one other thing that could go wrong, and it could affect your match because your equipment decides to not work for the rest of the match.
Yep. And so the idea I thought of to kind of implement it, slowly, to see, if something that we could work on is allow video evidence to be introduced for arbitration.
Mm-hmm.
So we still, the RO or the CRO in the state still can't, look at the video. They still can't use that to make a decision. But if you're sure enough that the video is going to overturn the call, you know what? Put the money up and go through the process.
Right. Which I don't disagree with, because, I mean, all we know at the end of the day is we don't want to absolutely be on the range from sun up to sundown.
Yep.
And it's one of those things that, do you put it on the guy who can't? And I mean, sometimes we have these CROs who are all retired people, and their eyes aren't the best, but they might not have made the call, and they could have honestly not even seen it. And then you got to ask them to look at a smartphone that they don't really know how to use as it is. I mean, I love seeing Jay Warden and Paul Hernandez, but I would not give them my smartphone and then ask them to open a file or a video. The phone litmus test. Can you get to my text messages?
Well, that was another issue that was brought up to me. How do we handle, that evidence now? Because, a shooter has, video evidence that, they're going to submit. What is the chain of custody? How do we handle that now? That's something else that we have to think about.
Oh, 100%. And and there's always something that can could affect it, right?
Right.
How long do you have and whatnot? And there's a lot of these things that need to still be discussed. So I'm hoping the RMI core can decide on something and get a recommendation to Troy, and then the rules committee can discuss it and bring it to the board. Hopefully before the end of the year.
That is the plan. So I brought it up to Troy. It was probably over a month ago. So they have been discussing it. So it is on their radar, and I expect before the end of the year that we will have something from them, and hopefully we'll be able to vote on it.
I could hope so.
Yep.
Well, Frank, I think we're kind of at the time. I mean, we both said we have to get up kind of early in the morning, so I think we'll wrap this one off. But Frank, I really appreciate you hanging out with me and chit chatting with me. I've had a blast. We had great conversations talking about things. Jabbing at New York without being too stabby. You answered all my questions pretty good, and I asked some pretty decent questions, I feel, so I didn't feel like I threw too many light punches, but we definitely had a good conversation. So if people want to get a hold of you, if they want to talk about even maybe joining your club in Staten Island, because they just found out that there's actually a club in Staten Island,
Yep.
Or they want to talk to you about USPSA stuff, where's the best place for them to get a hold of you, Frank?
Probably email is probably the easiest. frank.rizzi@uspsa.org.
Send it all. Do you find it better to still send it to the board at USPSA plus all the other ways, or is it?
So when you send an email to board at USPSA, that goes actually to everybody. That goes to also the employees. So Jake, Troy, Rick, everybody gets those emails. So if you want to send an email just to the area directors, you could actually send it to, I believe it's area.directors@uspsa.org. And that will only go to the area directors.
Gotcha. So either way, get a hold of you, frank.rizzi@uspsa.org. Send him your emails. Talk to him even if he's not your area director. I mean, he's serving the membership, guys.
Absolutely. I get people that reach out to me all the time. And, the first thing they say is, hey, I'm not from your area, but, can you look at this or help me out with this? Or, I appreciate, the work that you're doing. So, and I appreciate those emails.
And I definitely appreciate when people are doing that too. It makes things be seen, especially when there was for a while, no one was actually replying to emails. They were just reading them.
Yep.
But now we're getting actual replies and feedback and being noted, right? Where there's a document trail and some things are happening. So it's always good.
Things are happening. We're trying to, turn things around and go in a different direction, a little at a time.
100%. So Frank, thank you again for coming on and hanging out with me. Like I said, it was a blast, and I really appreciate you taking your time out of your busy life to come hang out with me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It was fun. Thank you.
No problem. And listeners, get out and do the things. I'll see you on the next one.